Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is David Fawcett. I was here last week and I really enjoyed it. So you have me back again. I have specialized a lot with chemsex, which is another thing that we do at Seeking Integrity, which is paired or fused substance use and sexual behavior. And so I do a lot of work with that area as well, and have done a book mostly dealing with gay men in that phenomenon, although it crosses all lines. I do have a podcast out on sex and relationship healing called Sex, Love, and Addiction, which mirrors Rob's podcast name, but my subtitle is Healing Conversations for Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Men, which is one of the big populations that they're afflicted by these issues and require some specialized treatments. So I do that. And I also have a film. I'll just do the whole thing. Shameless plugging here. We have a documentary out called Crystal City, which is a 90-minute documentary. It's about it follows actually some men in New York City in recovery from methamphetamine in Crystal Meth Anonymous. It's a powerful film. It's winning awards at film festivals, and it just came out on Amazon. So we're pleased with that. So there's a lot of good stuff happening.
That documentary is powerful. A little challenging to watch at moments, but it's a really powerful and very well done. So I'm glad it's going to be more widely available. That's great. So
I'll just say, it's a tough topic, and we try to be realistic about it, but the theme is really hope, because I think with sex and porn and chemsex addictions, I think so often there's this sense of hopelessness about it that it can never get better, and of course it does, and we really emphasize that in the film and follow people that are doing it and making it.
And that's a great theme. I hope you all know that we're here providing support and resources, but it's because we are faces of recovery. We are, I always consider myself to be very blessed by recovery. So there is hope, even for people like me. There is hope from, as bad as it is right now or has been, it can be different. So hopefully we're sprinkling a little hope throughout the time together here. So the first question, and please, if you've got questions, if you just type them in the Q&A, we'll be happy to answer those. My husband, who I've been married to for more than 20 years, just ended another affair. He was apparently in a sport with this person. Only 2 weeks later, he met a new single female sport partner. They have spoken on the phone twice for over an hour each time. I do not feel comfortable with this and feel he is vulnerable to another affair. He says he will never hurt me again and nothing is going on this time. He refuses to respect my wishes and says he will continue to see her despite my feelings and hurt. Is it possible for an addict to pick up someone new that quickly, and can his anger be a sign that it may be something more, or am I just being paranoid?
Well, I think there's not a lot of paranoia there. I think this is really behavior that crosses all kinds of lines and boundaries. And I think, first of all, I'm glad he ended the affair, but to pick up with someone else or to lay the groundwork for another one less than 2 weeks later is just totally unacceptable to me. And I think there's a real crossing of boundaries that's really unhealthy for him and for you. And I'm sorry you're in that situation. And as and as a former addict, a recovering addict myself, I know I used to say stuff to get me out of hot water. And you say that he says he'll never hit you again, nothing's going on this time. Addicts are less than truthful. I'll put it that way, be very diplomatic sometimes. And I think that defensiveness, that anger are all symptoms that he's in distress and he's acting out in an unfortunate way for both of you. And so I think I'm trying to think of the right lyrics of that song about your lying eyes, or what I can't get it right now, but I mean, you see what's going on, you feel what's going on, and he's telling you, no, you don't see that. And I think there's something there from what you just said in this brief paragraph. So I'd really encourage you to make sure that you have your support lined up, because this is going to be a situation where it's going to be up to you, I think, to draw strong boundaries, to set expectations, and to really get all the support you can in this, because it sounds like he's not in a place where he's going to be able to really step up from a recovery point of view and do the right thing right now. I think there's all kinds of kind of warning signs in that question you just said. So you have 23 years together. That's something, that's an achievement. So it's not something maybe you want to walk away from, obviously. There's a huge investment there, but this kind of behavior just can't go on. And no matter what he says, if he started to lay the groundwork, almost like grooming someone for an affair, at least that's my take on what I see happening. I don't know you both, of course, but I would be really cautious about that. And I'd really start to get your support in mind. Make sure you're getting your meetings, and you have a good therapist, you have a good group of friends and support system who understand these issues you can speak with and get help with them. Because this is a real slippery slope for everybody. So I wouldn't judge yourself as being paranoid in this situation. There's stuff you see right in front of your eyes that's troublesome based on past behaviors, and so I think you have every reason to be concerned.
So, Dr. David, I have my headphones on. I don't know if you have headphones handy, but otherwise, if you could turn the volume up, because you are a little bit muted, and somebody just commented on that too. But I find my headphones work the best. And while you're looking for those, I have a couple of comments as well. And You Can't Hide Your Lion Eyes by the Eagles is the song that comes to mind. But one of the things I was thinking of is an addict will lie even to themselves. Like I can't tell you how many times, like, this time I'm not going to do that again. Or like, I know how bad, this hurt. I don't want to do that again. So, but one of the therapists on the Prodependence webinar, Kim Buck, one time talked about how addiction is in the base part, the old lizard part of our brains. It's like breathing. And when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. It's like, I'm going to do anything I can. And like Dr. David just said, it's like, I'm going to lie. I'm going to, I'm going to get angry. I'm going to displace I'm going to blame you, like, you should trust me. It's been 2 weeks after 20 years. Like, I mean, a little bit of it is, of course, and, an addict wants to continue to do the things that we want to do, and we don't want to have negative consequences. So, like Dr. David said, I think getting support for you, and, it sounds like a series of affairs. I don't know if he, if you think he's got a sex addiction, or if it's just kind of a series of affairs. I don't know. On the sexandrelationshiphealing.com and on Seeking Integrity. Actually, Seeking Integrity, I know for sure there is. On seekingintegrity.com, there's assessment tools, and you can check, you can go through and see. And if things have progressed to the point where it's not just an affair or, an occasional affair, and, if there's compulsive behavior that doesn't stop despite negative consequences, and your feelings are negative consequences, then some help may be required. But like trust your gut on that one. For me, it was like, he's done nothing to earn your trust yet. 2 weeks is nothing. So, so the next question. Hi, Dr. David. When initially seeking treatment for sex addiction, I found that alcohol played an integral role in my personal ritualization. Is it common for these two isms to work together as well as independently?
Okay, can you hear me, Tammy?
A little bit, but can you turn up the volume on your computer maybe too?
Yeah, sorry about that. Is that any better?
Keep going.
It's not working very well, I'm sorry. How about that?
Maybe sit a little closer to your computer. We'll go with proximity.
Okay. All right. So I'll just speak up like this.
That's better. So yeah.
Okay, sorry. So the question was about initially seeking treatment for sex addiction, finding that alcohol played an integral role. And yes, I mean, this is exactly what we treat in terms of this paired or fused drugs and sex addiction, where we see the two coming together. And you don't say exactly how it played a role, but they can be all kinds of ways. Alcohol is a great disinhibitor. So we often find people kind of get warmed up for their sexual acting out with alcohol or other drugs, or they use alcohol at the same time to disinhibit, or they use alcohol to alternate with their actual sexual acting out behavior, so that they can maybe numb the urges, kind of keep it at bay, and then it pops in, and so they alternate. So the two kinds of things we do when we talk about are co-occurring, which when they happen at the same time, the alcohol and the sexual acting out, or it can be methamphetamine and sexual acting out, or any pair of drugs or a group of drugs and the sex, or it can be this alternating kind of behavior where we see people kind of dealing with their cues and triggers, trying to suppress them with alcohol, and then finally those burst through and they act out sexually. So yes, I mean, that ritualization is really a key component of this piece. And I also want to just highlight that word ritualization, because that's such an important word, because oftentimes we think of the acting out or the taking of the drugs or drinking alcohol as the behavior, the problematic behavior, and it certainly is. But it's also really important to understand that the actual the decision to use those drugs or act out sexually began long before that, and it often involves rituals with you know, getting time off or arranging to be unaccountable somewhere, telling people you'll be in different places, or securing your drugs, or lining up sex partners, or figuring out what you're going to do, and all these rituals, and then going online sometimes and just spending hours almost like salivating, and all that time. And we know that now with brain science, we know that our brains are lighting up when we're doing that. So if I pull out my phone, if I'm a sex addict and I go on Tinder or Grindr or Scruff or one of those apps, my brain is lighting up as if I'd ingested drugs or acted out sexually. It's our brain, we train our brains with these addictive behaviors. And so that ritual is incredibly important to understand, and everybody's ritual is a little different. So I encourage everyone to really capture your own ritual so you can really cut it off early, because oftentimes acting out is the final consequence, the final step in this whole long chain of behaviors that starts with something seemingly innocent. So yeah, really important insight. And yeah, thanks, great question, thank you.
I agree, and I think so much what you said, thinking about, you know, it isn't like with alcohol, it isn't when I pick up the bottle and take a drink, it's way back, you know, I got stressed out at work, or I had a fight, or whatever, there was something way back here, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm completely focused on this, and that whole loss of time, which is exactly, you know, part of numbing out and escaping. I'm numbing out and escaping even before I act out in whatever ism I'm choosing to act out in. So I think it's really important, like you said, to identify, you know, to go way back to, you know, wherever it was, you know, that started that whole process. And I think it's important to understand too, like you said, that the brain lights up as if we were doing it, even though we're just thinking about it, which, you know, it makes sense as to why porn is such a big thing, because you can be in the fantasy of this, you know, without engaging, so to speak. So
right, exactly.
Okay, so next question. I've had some major progress this week. Yay! I was sober for 4 days in a row for the first time in a very long time. That's great.
Congratulations. That's a big deal.
I feel like I lost it largely due to my tendency for all or nothing thinking. I was masturbating a bit without porn, but thinking about memories, and was feeling like I've stepped over the line already, so what the heck? I might as well enjoy it. And I got on the computer and watched porn, not once, but a couple more times that day, and masturbated to make the most of my slip. I really don't like counting days, because if I've screwed up at all, then I've screwed up the whole week. How can I deal with this?
Great question, and some good insight there too. You know, there's actually a name for what you described. It's called the abstinence violation effect, but that simply means that if I have a slip or a relapse, as you say, I might as well take advantage, right, and go all the way. And so I think people just kind of throw in it. I've slipped up anyway. Let's go all the way to the bottom. And so I think that is something people encounter. But I wanted to come back to your I lost it largely due to my tendency for all or nothing thinking. And there's a whole category of really their defenses. Psychologists call them cognitive distortions, but it's a way of thinking that are erroneous thinking. And black and white behavior is one of the big ones, where we see everything in like either this or that, and there's no gray area. And we can really, as an addict, I'll use the first person, I can really paint myself into a corner. If I see that my choices are only this or that, and I don't like either one of them, I feel trapped. And when I feel trapped, that's not a good thing. So that black or white thinking is really an important thing to be aware of. There are many others, you know, overgeneralizing, catastrophizing, you know, oh my God, There was something wrong with my car. My whole day's ruined. I might as well go get drunk. And so this idea of like just making a catastrophe out of everything, minimizing, jumping to conclusions, the use of shoulds or always or nevers. You know, if you hear those three words in your vocabulary, be careful, because all these things are ways of setting ourselves up, right? And they really limit us and end up in this feeling really trapped, and bad things happen. And so also, you said you were masturbating a bit without porn, but thinking about memories and feeling like stepping over the line. So you might want to look at masturbation and your boundary plan and see what role that plays right now, because it's very difficult sometimes to safely masturbate without sort of getting into some other areas of trouble. So again, something to talk about with your therapist or your sponsor, your support group, because I think these are all kind of warning signs that are clear. But I would sure be careful of those cognitive distortions, that erroneous black and white thinking, because those always kind of set us up in a way that can really undermine our recovery. And then that thing about stepping over the line, really, it's important. One of the principal concepts of 12-step recovery is that we can start our day over anytime during the day, right? So if I mess up at noon, at 12:01, I can say, I'm going to start my day over. I don't have to continue this madness and go all the way to the bottom. And I think my sponsor once years ago told me, you know, every addict is an elevator going down, and you can get off at the 30th floor or the 20th floor or the sub-basement. But the important thing is to know that the direction is one way, and you will get to the basement if you don't go. And so I think you have many opportunities here to interrupt that process. And that's the final thing I'd say about this, is that when you're in this process, it's really important to be able to find your exit points where you can interrupt it. You know, it's not an inevitable conclusion. You don't have to ride this thing all the way to the bottom. There are many points at which you could pick up the phone, get help, ask for help, interrupt your behavior, start the day over, do some corrective thinking if your black and white thinking is there. So there's all the steps you can take. So I'd really encourage you to kind of do a post-mortem on this whole thing and see what happened, see what you could have done differently. And to relate it to the question we just had about the rituals, if you go back, I would bet your trouble started before this masturbation and then getting into some trouble. So I'd really go back and see what was going on, what in terms of feelings, in terms of thoughts, in terms of thinking patterns, like you've identified the all or nothing, but really see if there's areas for correction where you can not fall into this next time.
And I agree with all of those things. And one of the things I was thinking too was that you had 4 days, and like you said, I haven't done that in a very long time. And so like I couldn't even help but wonder if you were going like, I've been too good. There used to be a song called Goody Two Shoes, Adamant. And I remember feeling like that when I first got into recovery. It's like, I'm such a goody two shoes. I wasn't, but like I just felt like I'd given up everything, and it was, and in that thinking that you were just talking about, it's, I've given up everything. I have to be good. And if I did anything bad, then I was bad, and it was really hard. And so when I'm reading, like I accomplished this, but then I screwed up, and it felt like you were really down on yourself for that, and trying to I don't want to count days because I don't want to have to deal with that. And I just kept thinking too, I wonder if you had stopped at like when you just crossed the line, would you have felt less shame about, or would you have felt better about yourself? I don't know. I'm just, I'm just kind of wondering, but would you have gone, well, a little not where I wanted to go, but not the end of the world? Or is it so all or nothing, so black and white that I just have to take the elevator to the sub basement? I don't know. So, but you did it for 4 days. I think you.
Now, let me say one other thing about that, if I can.
Better, yeah.
I just switched my settings there. Is that better?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. So the 4-day thing. Anytime we have sex addicts or porn addicts or chemsex addicts, or this fused paired or sex addiction, it's an intensity addiction. And so I think sometimes 4 days of abstinence, it's kind of piggybacking on what you said, Tammy. We like the drama sometimes. Things are too calm. Things are too steady. We're starting to feel feelings that are bubbling up, and we need distraction. And so I think there's a real danger of shaking it up. I used to talk about an addiction to drama, and I think that can happen sometimes. So I'd really be cautious. There are moments, I think the first 7 days, 30 days, 90 days, 120 days, those are all kind of landmarks where people kind of evaluate, and gee, things have been calm for a while, I need to shake it up. And this is not a conscious process, but something to be aware of, for sure.
So there's a few in the chat, so you can follow along. I'm gonna flip over to that a moment. So for those of you, if the Q&A is working for you, it's helpful for us to keep track, but I'm going to scoot over here. So I'm a sex addict and our discovery date was 2 months ago. My wife's still not over what I did, yet wants to have sex with me because she feels that she is closer to me. But for me, I feel like that's not good for me. Though I'm more vulnerable, but usually I end up crying after having sex with her. I can't say no when she initiates sex because I don't want her to feel rejected. What shall I do?
Well, congratulations on your recovery so far. I think the fact that you're feeling vulnerable and feeling emotions is really an important thing. And it tells me that you've really broken through some of that denial and shell that addicts can build around themselves to contain their feelings, and you're more open and vulnerable. And so I think that's an amazing thing, and that's a great thing. I think it's important for you both to negotiate some time here. I think it's spouses have different reactions. Sometimes they don't want anything to do with the partner. Sometimes they want sex or intimacy sooner because they're feeling vulnerable or want to get reconnected. And I think this is something that has to really be staged, and 60 days is not so long. I think sex and intimacy is really very intense at 60 days after a discovery. And I think so I would get some help if you have therapists, both of you, or if you do. I think to make a plan so that your wife understands where you're coming from and you are trying to honor her requests and her needs. But I think there's a way, kind of a compromise here somehow, where you can both get what you need, and she can be reassured. She might have some intimacy. It might be that you feel comfortable. I'm a sex therapist, so I often recommend non-coital intimacy. So just hug, kiss, rub, massage, that might help her feel loved and attached and intimate, and it might not be quite as threatening to you at this moment. But I think we underestimate the power of sex and the impact and the intensity it can have in recovery, especially early recovery. So the kind of feelings you're experiencing, you're saying you're crying after having sex with her, that tells me you're vulnerable, but also it's kind of a warning sign that these are really strong feelings that are kind of overwhelming you a little bit. So I really think it's important for you both to pace yourself. I would create a plan where you can each get your needs met, but not at an accelerated rate. I'd be really cautious about that. And I just want to underscore, it's really important to let your wife know that how much you love her and trust her and want that intimacy with her, but that this is a healing process. And I think it's important to pace yourselves, both of you.
Yeah, and I think it's important what you said, that she's not over what I did yet, and I'm confident she's looking to find some security and closeness and things with you as well. So, and she shouldn't be over it yet. That's
Right.
a long process. What David said about different kinds of touching. Dr. Rob talks about dating. Let's go back to dating and holding hands and, just like that type of thing, and kind of, take a few steps back perhaps and start slower and go from there. But, I agree that if addiction is all about not being in touch with our emotions, and strong emotions, can be a little bit of a trigger, but also if you're saying, I'm not sure about this. So I think that's I think that's something to pay attention to as well. So,
yeah.
Okay. So we're going to go back over to the Q&A. So I've just found out my partner is a sex addict. I do not have faith in his recovery. You didn't say how long. So I totally understand. I do, however, want to stay with this person. In my mind, I'm trying to entertain the idea of just having an open relationship. I know open relationships are not sex addiction coping strategies, but it almost has to be for my acceptance and healing. Do you ever see couples or an individual going this route? At this point, as 12-step says, he's constitutionally incapable of being honest.
Wow. So you've just found out, and so you're in the middle of this kind of discovery shock, I think, here too. That's always upsetting and unnerving, and your world turns a little bit upside down. So it's fair to say you don't have faith in his recovery. It's new, and I think that trust, as Tammy just said for the earlier question, it takes a long time, and I think an addict always wants that trust to come back faster than the partner is willing to give it. And that just is the way it is. It takes time and process. I think the idea of an open relationship is really problematic. In couples therapy, we talk about a container and backdoor strategies. And so if a couple is trying to work on their relationship, and if there's leakage of that energy, so through an affair, through working too much, through being distracted, all these things kind of take the energy out of the relationship itself, the primary relationship. And I think it could be problematic for you. I'd really encourage you to make a commitment to work through the feelings and work through what you need in this relationship. And it may be that you need something else down the road. But I think at this point, it would be doing you both a disservice because it's just going to take the attention away from some of the issues that require your attention for healing in this process. So I'd be very cautious about that. And I do like the idea of this backdoor that couples counselors talk about, because it really is taking energy off, and oftentimes couples can kind of go along years in a dysfunctional way because they're both having affairs or both working too much or distracted, but it's not a healthy healing relationship, or certainly not fulfilling. So I would really encourage you to kind of put the energy back into the relationship, see what you need, what you can do, and keep the communication really open between the two of you. Because if he may be constitutionally incapable of being honest right now, that could be. But if he's working a program of recovery, that'll change at some point, and things will become clear. So I would just use caution in terms of introducing more potentially problematic behaviors as a solution. That's my personal feeling.
And I agree with that. I think if that was the scope of your relationship and everybody's cool with it, whatever. But I think it's a problem in not permitting, but like for you to set aside what you want in a relationship feels like it's undermining it. What I was thinking is, like there's a lot of people that you think are constitutionally incapable of being honest, but when they get the right help, right, it changes. One of the things that Dr. David and Dr. Rob and the rest of the Seeking Integrity team are excellent at is getting to that foundation and helping people be able to learn to be honest with themselves and with others. And it's a process. And one of the things I think is great about the program, the Seeking Integrity program, is it provides a safe environment in which to break down those shells and to get there. And it's tough to do. It's not impossible, but it's tough to do just going to 12-step meetings or just going to seeing a therapist once a week because you've got 40 or 50 minutes or whatever. That's challenging. It's not impossible, but it's challenging where, a program like that gives you this contained space to really break things down and really, to set that foundation, and get a plan for going back out. What is your 3 circles going to look like? What is your safety plan? What, and you get that, pretty quickly. So rather than just giving him a pass on he's constitutionally incapable, I would encourage him and you to consider a higher level of help. So
two more things. There's no moral judgment about open relationships.
Right.
I've seen them work, but I think you have to be a pretty healthy couple to start that negotiation to go there. I don't think open relationships work as a solution to a problematic relationship. I think it just kind of doesn't do much help. The other thing, I just want to link this back to an earlier thing. You say, It was
I
black
put
and
it
white.
in answered.
Oh, it was a black and white thinking. I think I need to do this for my recovery or something like that. And then that's a case of, maybe setting yourself up. Maybe there are other options that you're not allowing yourself to see.
So follow up to, I'm going to skip around a little bit. So following up to the person that had 4 days of not looking at porn. So waking up in the morning is the hardest time. I pretty much hate my life right now and wake up dreading most days. I generally really liked getting my porn fix early in the day for a long time. How can I deal with this? I've struggled with mornings for a very long time.
That's a great question. And one of the things that we know, again, from kind of brain research, is that porn, sex addiction, and chemsex, which is why we kind of treat them all the same, are what we call super stimulants. And so they reset our baseline of pleasure very, very high. And so normal things, everyday things that used to really give us pleasure, that we used to really enjoy, don't do it anymore. And I think there's a period for a while the brain is kind of resetting when things aren't quite as bright and shiny and exciting as they might have been, because our brains are literally trying to reset from this high level of stimulation that was required, that became necessary to feel anything, whether it was a lot of porn or sexual acting out or the risk or the intensity or the effect of the drugs. All that sort of resets that super stimulation into a high point. So I think what you're feeling is quite normal. There's a word, anhedonia, which is this inability to experience pleasure. And I think it's going to be there for a while. It does get better, but it takes patience, and you're going through a kind of an amazing physiological reboot. And I think while you're in that space, it is going to be a little bit difficult to get excited and wake up and get your day going. And I think, and again, to tie this back to an earlier question, these rituals we have, it sounds like ritual. You would ritualize this early morning porn fix to get your day going. And so your body, your mind, it's expecting that. And that's going to take a while to change. Now we know about habits. Habits change pretty quickly. In like 30 days, if you do something consistently, you can really make an effective change. So I think just give yourself a chance with that. Don't reinforce it. Don't give into it. But just understand, be gentle with yourself, understand it's going to take a little bit of time. But I've seen this process prolonged where people kind of give into it once in a while, and it just stretches it out. So just understand this is normal. It's not comfortable. It's not fun, but it's normal, and it'll get better, to put it very succinctly.
So Dr. David talked about habits. So I'm wondering, if I hate waking up in the morning, is there something that I can go to bed at night looking forward to other than porn? I don't do a very good job with mindfulness exercises. I like them when somebody does a guided one for me, but I wonder if doing something like that would reset in a different way. It's not going to be, the dopamine rush, but if it's just a little more serene, not down. And I go for a walk or a run in the morning. That's something that is good for me to do. As I get up and it's Arizona. I'm out at 4:30 or 5:30 in the morning because it's still hot right now. But that's a good way for me to start my day, out moving, seeing things, sometimes in the dark, but still just to get moving. That's part of what I do to start my day in a more positive way. So I'm just wondering if there's something that you can do that would that going to bed at the night before, it would help you look forward to, at least I've got this, and even if it's not porn and it's not that dopamine rush, it's a more positive thing. Reading a good positive story, something, I don't know, but
Right. And the fact this is a long-standing pattern, I think really probably merits some attention. Is there depression, or is this an old reminder of something way back? There might be some benefit to exploring that a little bit. But I agree with Tammy. I substitute maybe another drug. I like coffee. So I really enjoy a nice casual leisurely cup of coffee in the morning, and before I really have to get going, that really does it for me. Or playing with my dogs, or going for a swim. I do little things like that that just I start to look forward to. And yeah, I encourage that as well, very much so.
I look forward to the coffee when I get back from the run. So I will run for coffee. So, okay. So I'm going to skip to one in the chat a moment. This is a 50-something-year-old woman who has had no success in finding a good therapist, either in the little country of New Zealand or online. So help would be great. I grew up having sex addicts, a pedophile father, uncle, and auntie act out on me. Oh, I'm so sorry. At an early age to teens, went on to partner addict men and got bad urinary tract infections. Now it scares me having sex anyway. So with that and my CPTSD, I have given up on romantic love. I think no one will want me or be able to slow down and be gentle enough with me sexually. Is that true?
Wow. I'm sorry for the experiences that you've had in your life. But I would caution you to think of yourself in those negative terms. I think one of the things we hear a lot of people coming in for treatment is, I feel like damaged goods. And I think because of all the things that have been done to us and the shame that we absorb from other people and all these experiences, without getting proper help or a safe place to even talk about them, they kind of linger. And so I really, what I hear in your words is that you've kind of internalized a lot of this, and that's become your identity. And I think it'd be great if I don't know anything about the therapy scene in New Zealand, but a professional would be really helpful for you, I think, to maybe work through some of these issues. But I wouldn't give up on yourself. And I think one of the things that's so important in this healing process is to really kind of open our hearts to ourselves and get some compassion and be gentle with ourselves, and not really create a story like no one will ever want me. That kind of thing is just, it's not helpful. So I would really be gentle and be honest and really try to get the support you can. It may be that you need to get some support online like this. But I think there are certainly people that have walked your path, thousands of them, millions of them, with that experience, who have come through and healed. And it takes connection, and that connection can be in real life or it can be virtual, but it takes a lot of people that can support you, and it takes some work in terms of the therapy work that's often difficult to go through and really relieve some of the trauma. What I'm hearing in your words is just really the effects of trauma, that you've grown up with this, and it's still affecting you in your adult walking around every day. So stay with it. I think be gentle with yourself. I'd get as much support as you can, and know that you'll get better. People do. It always saddens me when I encounter clients who really kind of have given up on themselves, or just feel kind of lost, and that's never the case. I mean, Tammy, and I know you've seen this too. I've seen miracles in this work. I'm a miracle in this work, and so don't ever give up on yourself. I think it's really important, if you can't even find a therapeutic kind of group, surround yourself with positive people who believe in you and can help you in this process, because it's all about the connection, and not succumbing to those negative beliefs that this is kind of the way it is and you have to kind of be stuck with it, because that's just not true. So I send you a lot of love and support and good wishes. But yeah, see, there may be options online that you could benefit from.
Yeah, I agree, and reach out to me via email, because I've got an idea that might work too. So, but one of the things I was thinking about too was, because I really struggled with, self-loathing, and that I was damaged goods, like you said. And one of my first therapists, in fact, it was in treatment, and they made me look in the mirror and say that I liked myself and loved myself. I couldn't do it looking at myself. Like I remember looking, and like I had to practice that, and I didn't feel it at all at first, but like now I do. Like I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but, you know I have worth. I know I can, you know, like I try on any given day to be the best person I can be. That's all I can do. And so I was thinking when I was reading that about you is like, you know, I believe that there is someone out there that would love you for who you are and the space you're at. And you know, I think that that's really true. So it's just, you know, if that person's here and you're here, it's connecting the dots, you know, to find each other, but being willing, being open, being vulnerable. I mean, that requires vulnerability, which John Taylor just talked about on his webinar earlier today about being vulnerable, and it's scary. So,
right. And I'll just put in a plug for affirmations, which is just what you described, Tammy, with these positive statements about ourselves. They basically are reprogramming false beliefs that we've internalized, like I'm damaged goods, or I'll never succeed at anything, or I'm a loser, or whatever we learn and internalize. But these affirmations are really powerful, and they are I statements, and they're present tense. So I am, you know, a strong and powerful person. I trust my instinct. I am capable of healing. I am lovable. I'm a worthwhile person, deserving of respect and love. Whatever it is, to really tailor them to yourself and then practice. And that's exactly what's required. And it does. And I had the same experience, Tammy. It didn't feel right. It felt like these are lines and I'm a really bad actor. But it started to work. It does work with repetition and practice.
Yeah, and it is changing it's changing. And there are moments, I love my dad, but he would say negative things about himself. And there have been, even in this past year, moments when I went, I'm such an idiot. And that's like a voice that my dad would say. And like, I can catch myself now and go, no, I'm not an idiot. That wasn't my brightest move, but I am not an idiot. And just being able to interrupt that, because otherwise like, it'd be like, and to be able to go, welcome to humanity, and literally be able to kind of laugh it off and, try to fix whatever it was I just did. I don't even remember what it was now, but I would have gotten so into that shame spiral of, I'm totally, I ruined everything, well, I didn't.
Right.
Okay. So the next one, I'm a sex addict and our discovery date was 2 months ago. My wife is still not over. That one got,
I think we did that.
Yeah. It got moved into the, okay, so I'm the wife of a narcissist, sex, and love addict who went to a treatment program in 2013. We both went to support groups, therapists, etc. He was sober for 5 years and then relapsed after he lost his job. He had multiple affairs prior to 2013. Dr. David, do you think that punishment, knowing the consequences, might leaving the relationship for a while again, or love, forgiveness, working it out is more effective, thus will help the addict control himself and heal? We would like to save our marriage.
Well, great question. I've gone through some tough times, but it sounds like you've been able to do this in the past with some healing. And so that's a good thing. I think this is one of those black and white questions, right? Either this or that. I'm not sure it's a matter of those two choices, but I will say that the idea of punishment never works. We can set boundaries, we can set healthy boundaries, we can have consequences, and that's all good. But I think the idea of punishing can really set up this dynamic where a person starts to feel like a victim, then they act out, and it kind of feeds that addictive process. So I think setting healthy boundaries, setting clear boundaries of consequences is totally appropriate. But I'd also like to add to that, that's not to the exclusion of love and forgiveness. And forgiveness has a point at which it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate early on. But I think loving firmness, setting boundaries, having consequences, but with love, without anger, without hostility, if that's possible. It's hard sometimes. That's really the most important way, I think, to do it, is just to, the idea, we work with our guys in treatment saying, I'm a good person that's done bad things. I think not to reinforce that, the idea that you're a bad person and you're going to be punished, but to really understand, and apparently with your history too, know each other's hearts in this and really feel some heart and compassion. But not to say you don't have to do what you need to do, do to have consequences, but I wouldn't frame it in terms of punishing, and I wouldn't let go of the idea that it's a loving act, even if it's a consequence. It certainly needs to be loving for yourself, and it can be loving for him, and it can be loving for your marriage. But I think to really go back, you guys did it. You had it going for a while, and there was this a stressor with the loss of a job. So I think this is something that really is very solvable. I think there's a lot of solutions out there, but you probably need some help, guidance, getting through it. But I really encourage you to not disengage, but to really stay engaged. You say you both want to save your marriage. That's wonderful. So don't disconnect, but stay connected in a healthy way with firm boundaries and work it through. But I think it would be a shame to just kind of give up or punish or disconnect in an unhealthy way, because both of you would be left feeling a little bit empty, I think. So just, I'd encourage you to get some guidance, get some help, but really try to work this through. You've got great history, and he may be a narcissist, sex addict, and love addict, but he's gone to treatment. He had it together for a while. He can have it together again. So I'd encourage you to just keep working at it.
I would too. And I agree that, you do have a history, and, obviously a pretty big bump in the road right now, but Dr. Rob wrote the book Prodependence, Moving Beyond Codependency, and talks about attachment. Really being attached is the antithesis of addiction. So having healthy boundaries for you, and how do we do this? And I was thinking a couple of resources, practical resources, but there's a couples workshop at Seeking Integrity Los Angeles. Paul Hartman is a gifted a couples therapist, and
Right.
There's one September 20th through 22nd, and then there's another one October 18th through 20th. And then the other thing I was thinking about is there's a 3-day workshop, and it's kind of a reboot. So it's for people that are kind of a little stuck, or may have suffered with a relapse or whatever. But again, it's at Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, and that's the weekend of October 11th through 13th. And maybe that could be a jumpstart for him, and or the two of them, jumpstart for him, and then some couples work for the two of you because it really helps reframe, rather than getting stuck in here's where we're at right now. Well, okay, how do we navigate this so that we're on a path to something different? So just a thought. There's other options out there, but obviously I know what great work Seeking Integrity does, so I have to put those out there. So the next question, for me as a sex addict, it's hard for me to wake up in the morning and get myself out of the shame spiral, or during an argument with my wife, it's easy for me to fall into shame spiral. Are there any tools or coping mechanisms?
Wow. So yeah, that we've talked about this before with shame spirals. It's a common thing. It's a universal thing probably with addiction, but there's no benefit from a shame spiral. Sometimes we can take a negative event or feeling and try to work with it and kind of make it something good or a lesson out of it. Shame has no caloric value. It's an empty feeling, and so I think you're wise to avoid it. And the nature of a spiral too, the farther you go down into it, the harder it is to get out. So I think having an awareness when you start to get into it, or an awareness of the triggers or whatever it is triggering it, and interrupt those soon is going to be really important. When you're in shame, to me, there's a couple of things I like to do. One is some of the affirmations we talked about, to sort of talk yourself out of it, which have some power in that. But I also like to get some perspective. So if I'm in a shame spiral, and thank God it doesn't happen very much anymore, but it does, I really am my own worst enemy, and I really kind of beat myself up in a way that's really kind of profound. And at those moments, I need some people who can kind of do a reality check with me, whether it's a sponsor, friends, people that can kind of say, look, this is what we see. This is what you did wrong. This is what you could do better. This is why you're still an okay person, just to kind of interrupt the process. And the other thing I do that is difficult when you're in that, but I try to do a gratitude list. And I find gratitude is like a universal antidote to shame, or to a lot of negative feelings, but particularly shame for me. And if I can just do 5 things that I'm grateful for, it kind of starts to reverse that shame spiral. It gets me into a different part of my brain, and it starts to kind of interrupt that process. And so I employ that a lot. The other thing I'll mention, I talked about really being aware of when you're on the edge of a shame spiral, or I think you say you wake up with it. But I think to really use mindfulness, which is it can be hard sometimes, but just to really be aware, self-aware of what's connecting, what's going on there. Because we don't just wake up and go into a shame spiral. Things happen, right? We wake up with a feeling, we wake up with an interaction, we wake up with an expectation, something is going on. And so I would really take a look at that. And like we said at the beginning of this webinar, to work backwards, maybe farther than you can even think could be affected by this, and see what's going on. Do you go to bed with an expectation of something, of tomorrow's going to be a terrible day? I don't know, I'm making that up, but I think it's really useful to look at all these expectations, and don't you're almost setting an intention that you're going to wake up and go into shame spiral. I would really open the possibility of a different way to wake up. And I would even, and this sounds a little hokey, but I'm a hypnotherapist, and we talk about setting intentions and believability. And so I tell myself tomorrow, when I go to sleep, I say, tomorrow's going to be a great day. And tomorrow may be a horrible day, but my intention is it's going to be a great day. And I wake up in a fairly good attitude. So I think just be conscious of your feelings and your self-talk, like as we've been talking about today, and just manage it. But I think a gratitude list is easy, free, and really powerful in this.
So I was looking around. Normally I have, and I see one way over there, but I won't get it. But I have Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. He started a little magazine called Guideposts, decades ago. And I've been a subscriber for years, and this is just what I do. So this is not a promotion for Guideposts. But it's all these little positive stories, and I've got one right by my bed, and I can, wake up in the morning and read one of those first thing. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm not going to feel ashamed. I'm not going to, it changes my thinking. The other thing is I have a granddaughter who is not a happy waker upper. So when she visits, I have Pharrell Williams Happy on my phone, and I go in her bedroom and I dance around to her groans while I'm playing Happy at the top of my phone, and and all of that, and then she's laughing. And so honestly, it's just finding something that I love what you said about the night before. I'm going to have a great day tomorrow morning, and I really think that there's that intentionality about setting that. But like, if I know the first thing I'm going to hear is Pharrell Williams Happy, it's kind of hard to have. It's kind of hard not to be joyous when you wake up, So I think that just find something that interrupts that. Be intentional about putting the mindfulness. Put positive things in. Gratitude. I love gratitude lists. I can always find things to be grateful for. So
one other thing, there's a thing called negativity bias, which is where we basically over time train our brains to only notice the bad stuff, and part of it's our hardwiring, as when we were out in the savannah, trying to survive tigers and lions. We are trained, our brains notice danger. That's what we're kind of wired to do. But in today's modern society, our brains kind of work against us, because we start to notice all the bad stuff around us, and we, after a while, don't see the good stuff. And so that's called negativity bias. So I'd really encourage you to be conscious of your thoughts too. And that's where a gratitude list is important, because it makes us see stuff that's not negative, and focus on things that are positive, to kind of counterbalance that negativity bias that really is inherent to all addiction. We all fall into that.
So here's a question. How can an SA move out of shame and into humility?
Wow. Well, that's a healing process, right? Out of shame into humility. I think shame, again, this is my take. When I'm in shame, or when I see somebody in shame, they're very self-centered. It's often there's a victim thing going on, like I'm the worst person in the world. How could I have done that? How terrible of me. It's kind of all about them. And to me, that self-centeredness is the exact opposite of humility. So we want to kind of change that. And I think, the root of humility is it's not humiliation. It's honesty. I think in Greek it goes back. It means honest. So humility means taking an honest look at what's good about me and what's bad about me, and that's humility. Kind of having an honest awareness of it. So I think it's really, for me, that path you're talking about of moving from shame to humility is all about getting honest and getting real. And that takes time, because we all have these defenses and skewed thinking and rationales and false beliefs and all this stuff we have to work through, and kind of like a machete, in treatment, kind of whacking them down one at a time. But that is creating a path toward humility by getting rid of all those addictive kind of entanglements, and really just getting honest. And that's, when I was in early recovery, getting honest is not something I could say, okay, I'm going to get honest. It just is, it's really elusive. So I think it takes time, it unfolds, but it's these little aha moments. It's thousands of those little aha moments for me. And finally I started to get a more accurate picture of who I am. And I think that's where humility came in. But I think when I was in shame, or when I fall into shame now, there's nothing with humility about it. It's very self-centered. It's very, almost grandiose in like how terrible a person I am. And so that's not a place we want to be. So I guess in a word, honest, getting honesty with, incorporated into your recovery.
Well, I was really going to the place of this. It's very selfish, and I know that sounds counterintuitive too. But I was thinking, it's all focused on me. It's like, I'm so bad, I'm so shameful, all of that type of thing. I am not connected to other people. So for me, it was almost connecting to people, because then as soon as I'm connecting to people, I'm more aware of them, and it's less about me. It's more about them. And so being in that relationship really changes the shame to humility, because I want to be involved in these relationships, not just focused on, the grandiosity of my shame, because like, oh, I'm so horrible, that type of thing. So
that's a great point.
We have time for one more question. So how do I differentiate the addict from the real feelings? My in denial porn addict husband hates me and decided to divorce me. We have an infant daughter, and it blows my mind that he can leave this family. I don't want him to regret his decision. I truly feel it's the addict talking, but currently the addict is changing the course of our lives, which seems unfair.
Well, I'm sorry for the circumstances there. I think, so differentiating kind of addictive thinking from reality, it's harder than you might think for the addict. They have their own reality. They're in it. A lot of these beliefs that we've been talking about, false beliefs, different attitudes, errors in thinking, like black and white thinking, or overgeneralizing, catastrophizing. So to kind of get a real baseline in that can be very elusive. I think the cure, I think in that sense, is time. I think rushing into any kind of decision is a problem. I don't know where your husband is at in terms of his recovery or not, but I think
in denial porn addict. So yeah.
Okay, so
yeah. No recovery.
So he's in his addiction, and that's not coming from a place of reality. And so I think I'm sorry, because people make decisions out of those addictive places, and it's hurtful. It's hurtful to them. It's hurtful to their families. But it's a sequence, and I think really to break through into reality, he's going to have to get into recovery, and otherwise it's going to be a lot of addictive stuff, back and forth, the drama and blaming and victimizing and being a victim and all that stuff, the dance that addicts go through. So I'm sorry. I think I've seen this before, where people make really consequential decisions out of their addiction, and not thinking clearly. And I always tell my clients, the decisions you make today are probably not the decisions you're going to make in 3 months or 6 months. And just to really, that's why in program we talk about not making any major decisions, like a divorce or having a kid or changing jobs or moving to another country or whatever, in the first year, because our brains are still kind of scrambled, and they're getting into recovery. So I'm sorry this is the case. I wish you could get some help and to kind of break through some of this, because I know with some recovery, and even like at SR, we do a 2-week intensive. I think with a 2-week intensive, he'd have a different viewpoint on it. But I do hope he can get some help. because it's going to impact a lifetime's worth of issues for you and your family.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the decision is his. He's choosing in an addiction to move forward with the divorce. So my hope is you get support for you and that infant daughter. You can raise her and love her, and he may eventually regret his decision, but only probably if he ever gets into recovery. I know many people who have, 20 years down the road went, well, I didn't have to lose that relationship if I had, but that wasn't where they are. Addiction is, it's horrible. It steals not just to the person that's got the addiction, but obviously, it's affecting you, and it's going to affect your infant daughter, on some level, because her dad isn't going to be there for her, and isn't going to, he can't show up for himself, let alone, for you and an infant daughter. So, you have a lovely daughter. I hope that you get support for you, and just prioritize you and her.
Right.
And I'm really sorry. And I wish I could, zap him with a magic wand and he'd go, oh, wait, that's not how addiction works. So and he's not choosing the addiction. The addiction has hold of him. And until he, gets recovery and gets a foundation for it, doing it different, it's like you have no choice. I remember thinking, I can't do anything differently. And so what I talked about with the lizard part of the brain earlier, that I can relate to, that it's like breathing. I have to do this, and I can't imagine life without it. So it's terrifying to think of it without. Yeah. So I'm sorry. So we are past out of time. Dr. David, thank you so much for being here.
Pleasure.
Thank you
Always
all
fun.
for the great questions and your contributions, and we'll see you next week.
Or Wednesday night.
On Wednesday
Same
night,
time.
yeah, I was going to say, see Dr. David Wednesday night. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Good night, Tammy.
Good night.